Okay, in this video we will talk about how to index the matrices data using statsd. Okay, so if you remember from my previous video, I talked about different kinds of matrices protocols Splunk supports, right? Statsd, collectd, right? So in this video we will be concentrating on the statsd. Maybe in future videos I will be creating separate content for collectd and other stuff as well. Okay, so in this video, so mainly we will target how to set up statsd locally, and then we will maybe try to create some of the client from where we will be basically pushing, we'll be generating some matrices and which will be going to the Splunk for indexing purpose. Okay, so now ideally in production scenario, this should be done because your matrix generating software or system, maybe I should say here, okay, the matrix generating system should send the matrices to forwarder, heavy forwarder in this case, and then heavy forwarder should move it to the indexing part, right? So that should be the ideal setup in production like scenario. But as we are doing some kind of demo today, right, so we'll just try to understand how it works. So everything I will be setting up in my local only. Now in future videos maybe I'll try to set it up through heavy forwarder as well. Okay, so to start with, so the statsd is a network daemon which basically built upon that node.js platform. Okay, so the first thing you need is node.js. So in my system I already have node.js installed, but I'll just show you. It's very simple installation. If you just search in Google install node.js, okay, so it will take you to that nodejs.org. Okay, so there you can download for your corresponding operating system, and it's just a simple download over there. Okay, so download and install over there as well. So after you install node.js, right, then you need to go to this link. This link has been provided in the Splunk documentation as well for statsd. It's a GitHub link, so I'll be providing this link as well here. Okay, so this is the statsd daemon basically which run on top of node.js, which will basically the main functionality of this guy is to get some matrices data and send it to the system. Okay, now where it will send it in this case it will be our Splunk, right? But we will see how to configure it as well. Now to set these things up, this statsd, what you need to do is you need to basically clone it or download it, okay, and keep it somewhere in your operating system here. So I kept it in my YouTube folder. If you see, there is a folder called statsd. Okay, so now couple of things we need to mention it or see it over here. If you go to its GitHub link and read it over here, now there is a installation and configuration setup, right? Now the manual installation process, either you can use Docker, okay, which we will not be using today. We will be using the manual installation only. So the first step is you need to install node.js, which I already told how to do that one. Okay, now second step is we need to clone the project, which we have already cloned in my YouTube folder, right? And the third step is just see the configuration file, this example config.js, and put it somewhere, okay, and start the daemon. Now if you just see the example.config over here, okay, so I'll just try to open in Notepad++. Okay, so there are a lot of configurations over here. Now statsd by default it use Graphite as a backend or visualization purpose. So we will not be using Graphite today because we will be integrating with Splunk today, right? So we'll just ignore this Graphite related configurations here, okay, even this backend part as well. So what we will be mainly concentrating about is the port number over here, on which port this particular daemon will be running. Now the default port is 8125, but in your case if this 8125 port is not available, you can give any free and available port over here. Okay, so this is the first step. Now the next step is we need to run this, we need to start this daemon basically. So for that we need to use this node command, right? If you install node.js, this command will be automatically available. So this node command is basically using this stat.js and the path of config over here, right? So first we will go to our command prompt here. Okay, we'll run as an admin. Now we will, as we have our statsd installed in our D drive, right? So we will go to D drive first. Okay, now two files we are going to use it over here. One is stats.js, another is example config.js, right? So our command will be something like this: node, to check it out, this node command is there or not, right? If you just give the node command and press enter, right, it should give you this prompt here. Okay, so if it is not installed, it will tell like node command is not available. Okay, so now we will start the daemon, right? So we will just run this command node, then the path of this stats.js, I'll just copy this one, I will paste it over here. Okay, then slash stats dot js. Okay, and then this example config dot js path as well, right? So we will just give this same path because it is in the same path, statsd, and then the file name over here, right? So this one. Okay, so if I just run this command, if you see the server is up, it should show something like this one. Okay, so you can close this one as well. Okay, so because when we will be configuring Splunk, right, because if you are accessing that server from here, Splunk will not be able to use that particular port because this is used over here, right? So we will just try to close this one. This will basically show like this server is usable over here. Okay, so we will close this one. Now we will go to Splunk and configure it. Okay, so first of all we'll try to go to our Splunk first. Okay, so we basically configured the statsd over here, right, which is basically a daemon which expecting a matrix and it will forward to somewhere. Okay, now it as we have seen over here, it is running on port 8125, right, and it uses UDP protocol to forward that data. Okay, so to basically send that data to the system. So basically if we listen, or if we create an input in Splunk to listen to this particular port, we should be fine, because if we send some matrices to this port, right, Splunk will be automatically able to index that particular data because it is listening to this particular UDP port, right? So now to configure this one, what we'll do is we'll go to settings, we'll go to data inputs. Okay, under data inputs, if you see there is a UDP one, we'll click add new over here. Okay, and UDP port number, we will be giving the port number where our statsd daemon is running. Okay, because we want to listen to that port, because that port, to that port we can send some matrices, right? Now source name and this connections from this thing I'll be keeping by default only. Okay, now the source type is important over here. As I have mentioned in my previous video, out of the box Splunk supports the source type first statsd collectsd, right? So if I just click on source type and go to matrices, right, if you see there are 3 source type already pre-trained in Splunk: statsd, matrices underscore csv, and the collectd underscore http, right? Now as we are dealing with statsd, so we will be selecting the statsd over here. Okay, now the app context, where we will basically save this particular configuration. So I'll be selecting search and reporting app. Now based on your configuration, maybe if you are creating a new app for this particular input, you should be selecting that particular app. Okay, now host name, I'll just keep the IP only. Now index, this is important stuff. Okay, now for Splunk matrices, it uses a special kind of index. Okay, I'll just show you over here. So I just went to settings and indexes over here. Okay, so for Splunk matrices, if I just click on new index here, if you see the indexed data type, now for generally we create a index with a data type called events. Okay, now for matrices the data type has to be matrices over here. You have to select this one. Okay, so as I told in my previous videos, Splunk handles matrices in very separate way, so that's why the index data type is also different over here. Okay, and if you have remembered, like normal Splunk commands together to work on the matrices, like index equals to this index name, will not work in these cases. We'll see how to deal with this one as well. Okay, so this has to be done. Now I already created a matrix called metric underscore index over here. Okay, with the type matrices, so I will not be recreating that again. Okay, so I'll be selecting that matrices now. Okay, this one. So this step is important over here. I'll go to review mode. I'll click on submit over here. Okay, now if I just click on start searching here, so if you see, whenever you click on a normal index and start searching, Splunk generally writes a query called index equals to something, source equals to something, and then it runs a query, right? Here if you see, the default query is something with starting with mstats, because as I said, for matrices, index equals to the matrix index name, generally those type of query does not work. Okay, we generally you have to use mstats and mcatalog initially, then we can, after that if you see this output is like statistical table, after that you can use any kind of stats related commands in Splunk. Now you may have seen like this you are seeing this kind of numbers because I was testing something, so don't worry about this one. We will try to create a new metric over here only. Okay, so we created an input which is basically listening over here, right? So to see actually what is the data coming to our system. Okay, because let's say we do not know about how matrix related commands are working. Okay, but still you can work with matrices. Okay, by clicking on this one. If you go to search and reporting app, okay, there is a tab called matrices over here. Now this will only come when you are on Splunk 7.3 and above. Okay, now for older version of the Splunk, you need to download this particular app. So if I just go to Google over here, okay, Splunk matrices, METRICS workspace. So this app from Splunk base, you can download it and then you can install it. So from Splunk 7.3 onwards, it is by default installed with Splunk. Okay, so as I'm working on Splunk, higher version of the Splunk, so it is already available over here. So we will come back to the screen once we ingest some metric over here. Okay, so our setup is done. Now the main thing is we need to have a client, or we need to have a system which is generating a matrix, right? So for that we will be using a client today. Now when I was doing this particular POC, initially I tried to create a Python based client, but I saw a lot of issues over there, like related to the dimensions and all. So what I will be using today is like the npm package. Now you generally do not need to worry about the clients, because when you deal with real-time matrices, right, generally you will be dealing with a system which will be basically giving you the matrices. Okay, so it should be fine, as I am doing everything from the scratch, so I have to write to this client as well. Okay, so I will not be writing any client now. What I'll do is, from npmjs.com there is a client called statsd client. Okay, I'll be using that one, and they have some kind of code examples as well. We will try to use those things only. Okay, so to install this one, if you see, there is a command called npm I statsd client, right? So we will do that one. Now this one you can install it anywhere. Okay, so what I'll do is, over here in under YouTube folder, this folder I created a folder called getting matrix data from statsd. Okay, we will try to use this particular directory for installing that particular statsd client and try to create a simple JavaScript file which will basically generate a metric. Okay, now so to do that one, what I have to do is I will just copy this whole path here. Okay, I'll go to our command prompt again. I'll run as administrator. Okay, now as we are dealing with D, so we'll go to D over here. We'll go to that particular path. Okay, now there we will write node I, the same command whatever we have seen it over here. Okay, so it is copied, so I'll just run it over here. Okay, so now before I run it, I just wanted to show you what we have. Only single file over here, right? This is not related to the anything. This is for my POC only, so you can ignore this one. So if I just run this one now, after going to that particular directory, it should create a folder called this one. If you see it, it created two things: node underscore modules and package log.json. Okay, so this node underscore modules has to be present before you can use this particular client, because this is a module basically. Even if you think in terms of Python and other language, it just we are doing some kind of import stuff over here. Okay, so we just install this module. Now we will be using this module to create a JavaScript file. So for that, what I'll do is I will go to Notepad. I will set the language as JavaScript over here. Okay, I will again go to this npmjs.com website. Now if you see, for quickly set it up, this one. Okay, so first thing is we have to initialize this client over here, right? We'll just copy this code according to, and we'll make modification over here. Okay, so first thing is this is what we have installed it in our system, right? So if I just go to our node modules folder, this is the module over here, right? So what it is doing, it's basically including that module, right, using this require keyword, okay, or required function call, and then it is creating a new instance of it, right? Now over there, what is the information we have to provide over there? Our host name, which in this case it will be localhost, right? And the port name where our statsd client will be running. So in this case it will be our 8125. Okay, so this is important. Okay, so this port, it will try to post that particular metric over here. Okay, so we initialized our statsd daemon over here, or a server. Then what we have to do is we have to basically now create a metric and post it over here. Now there are a lot of ways in statsd protocol you can send matrices. Okay, now Splunk supports only two things. If I just go to the documentation again, so there are two things called basic statsd metric protocol and the expanded statsd metric protocol. Now if I just talk about in very simplistic term over here, this is like how the matrix structure or format will be. So if I just copy these two guys over here, okay, so let us try to understand thoroughly these two guys. So our basic protocol is this one, okay, and the extended one is a little bit complex but very easy to understand, is this one. Okay, so if you just see the format of it in the basic protocol, what is happening, the first thing is the metric name you are providing, then a colon, then the metric value, okay, then a pipe character, and then the metric type. Now as you remember from my previous videos, Splunk only supports two type of metrics, gauge metrics and the count metric. Okay, so there are other type of metrics as well, like times and all, so which currently Splunk do not support. Now gauge means basically it can go up and down anytime, right? So that means if I just talk about temperature, right, you are measuring something over there, and count means you are counting something over there. Let's say how many server requests happen for this particular minute, right? This is the count. right? And if I just talk about temperatures and all, this is the gauge one, right? You are measuring something over there. Now in the extended format, the format is little bit same compared to the basic, okay, till this point over here. If you see, metric name, value, and the metric type. Now in the extended format also you can give a sample rate and the dimensions over here as well, right? If you just remember from my previous video, we talked about dimensions, right, which is basically the metadata about this metrics. Like, so if I just talk about in terms of, let's say, a Amazon CloudWatch, right? So a dimension could be like the zone, right, the server name, something like that, the data related to that particular metric, that is also you can provide as a metric data itself. Okay, now there is one thing called sample rate over here, right? So let us try to understand this one, because this is a interesting one. Now the sample rate generally works or generally defined for counter type of metric. Okay, now let's say in our system, every we are measuring the how many people are logging to our website, right? So maybe in fraction of seconds that we are generate, our count is increasing over there, right? So that means for each and every count increase, we will be generating a metric, right? Because we are monitoring that particular system, right? So that means the number of metrics we are sending to Splunk will be very, very huge over here, right? So to overcome that challenge, what you can do is you can provide a sample rate. Okay, so this is how internally that stats daemon as well will be handling that particular sample rate. Even Splunk will be handling as well internally. Now let's say I am providing a count metric. Let's say server request. Okay, server request metric name, and the value is, let's say, 5 over here. Okay, now metric type, as I said, this is mainly the sample rate is defined mainly for the count type of metrics, right? So the metric type is either G or C. G stands for gauge metric and C stand for count metric over here, right? Then pipe. Now the sample rate is at the rate. If I just give a sample rate call, it's a 0.5 over here. Okay, so what internally the Splunk do? So basically what is happening, so the value of the metric, right, over here, if you see, it multiply the value. That means if I just write it, the formula over here, it multiply this value, okay, into 1 over sample rate. Okay, so that means we are basically talking about, we are sending a value 5, but we are mentioning it's a 50%, right, because 0.5. So internally it will multiply this value with 1 over 0.5, that means 2 over here. That means when it will be indexing it, right, it will be indexing as a 10. Okay, so this particular technique has been used to reduce the traffic. So basically we are downsampling the whole event over here and sending it to Splunk, so that we will basically save some kind of network traffic over here. Okay, so with this idea of this basic and extended format of the stats D, okay, let us try to see if we can send some matrices to the Splunk. Okay, so for that, as we will continue working with our client, so we have defined our host and port number over there, right? Now to send a metric, there are a lot of options. Now one of the method is we can send in a raw format as well. If you see it here, is dc.raw. Okay, if you want, you can definitely send in other format as well, but I am using this raw format because this the format of it over here, right? If you see the format, the way we are sending the metrics it's similar to this one, which one we have discussed now. Okay, so first we will try to do is, let's say we will try to send a gauge matrix over here. Okay, so I'll copy this guy here, I will send it over here. We already defined the SDC here, right? So we are sending the metric in a raw format, right? So let's say I will just say system dot temperature, okay, is, let's say, 56 over here, and the type will be gauge here. Okay, so now this either we can use this one. So this is the basic format over here, right? So we are giving a metric name colon the value and the metric type. Let us try to see whether this guy is getting indexed in Splunk or not. So to do that, what we'll do, we'll save this one, okay, into the same folder. Okay, okay, so we'll save it something like stats stats d underscore client, something like this. Okay, so we created a JS file which is basically defining a stats d client server, and then it is basically sending a raw format metric over here, right? So to run this particular client, what we have to do, you'll run in very similar way. We'll go to this particular folder, I think, which we are already in, right? So getting metric data stats d. So if I just go over here, we have created our stats d client over there, only same folder, so we are already there. So what we'll do is we will try to run this command node, and then this particular file name. Okay, so you are basically running this command over here. Now in ideal scenario, this is now, for this demo, this is becoming my source system, right, which is generating a metric. In ideal scenario, you will have your own source system over there, which is continuously generating a metric over here. Now as I am not doing any continuous generation, because I have not implemented a client which is generating matrices continuously, so that's why I'm manually running it over here. Okay, so if I just run this particular client, okay, using the node command, so it is basically sending this metric over here into this port 8125. Now as we in Splunk, we have created an input which is listening to this UDP port 8125. Ideally this metric should show up in my Splunk, right? So if I just go to my Splunk here, okay, now we get a time to discuss this particular interface over here. Okay, so let us refresh this particular page. Now if I just click on metric over here, if you see the system.temp is showing up over here, right? If I just click on it over here, so it should show up a graph with the value. Okay, and now if I just hover over this value, if you see here in this position, the value will be showing up. If you see 56 over here, right? So that is what we have sent it over there, right? So we successfully able to send a metric to Splunk. Now let us try to discuss this interface over here. Okay, so under the matrices, you will be seeing all the different matrices you are sending to your Splunk enterprise. Okay, as previously I was testing it out, I was sending this event.login over there, so it is showing up over there as well. Now from here you can select the date, the time range basically, and if you send another metric, okay, you can always click on this refresh one to refresh this one. It will create a nice line graph by default. Now data sets, this is the accelerated data set, it will be showing up over here. We will see in future videos as well, even for alerts as well. We'll see how to create metric related alerts. Okay, now on the we talked about this guy over here. There are a lot of options, like if I just click on this guy again, it will create a similar graph again. Okay, so there you will have an option to how you are arranging them, either side by side or top and above. So this type of arrangement you can do, but as I will not be, because this is required to create a different graphs. Okay, so as I will not be using that much now, so I'll be working with the single window here. On the right hand side, if you see, so you can apply the aggregate functions, how much aggregation you need, whether you need average value, time basis, max, minimum, standard deviation, sum, this type of things you can do it over here. Okay, now you can use the split by as well. Okay, so now split by you can do only based on the dimensions over here. Now as I have not sent any dimensions here, right, because I have just sent the send the metric in a very basic format over here, right? As I discussed before, right? So that means there is no default dimensions there is no user defined dimensions I have sent. So it is taking a default dimensions called host and index. Okay, so that it will always create by Splunk. Now this is the time series you can create. Okay, every 30 minutes, or the time range, right? That you can select it over here. So basically this is required for the time series you are creating. So if I just tell in a very simplistic way, if I just consider all of these things, suppose let's say I am selecting 30 minutes, so that means I am taking the average value of each and every 30 minutes and splitting by the dimensions. That is what it does mean. Now we can also filter the metric data using this filter. Suppose you just wanted to exclude or include certain values of host or something, right? You can do of the dimensions basically over here. Okay, so that also you can do it over here. So I'll not be using that filter conditions now. Okay, so hopefully we got an idea behind this particular window. Okay, we will discuss in future videos how to work with metrics related commands as well, but this particular interface, it is really good to know, because you do not need to use any commands over here. Everything you can do it from this UI itself. Okay, so we send a metric without a dimensions, right? So let us try to send the same metric again. I just wanted to show you how it generates that line graph. So what I will do is, for this gauge again, so let's say now it is 58. Our temperature goes up from 56 to 58, right? So I'll run my client again now, right? So let it run. So it should show up over here as well. Now I will refresh this particular string. If you see, now it is showing up 58 over there. Okay, if you see 58 over there. Now to understand it more, maybe I'll change the graph type from here. Somewhere you can change the chart settings as well. So enable stacking. So if I just do this one, so it will be easier to see the values over there. Okay, so we send a couple of matrices over there, and it is getting indexed in Splunk, right? So let us try to see if we can send some metric using dimensions as well. Okay, so as I said, dimensions are all mainly implemented for counter. So I'll say the metric type as C over here. Okay, so let's say our count is first 30. We are talking about, let's say, server dot request. Let's say how many requests is going on. Okay, so initially it was 30, and my metric type is count, and then I will work with sample rate. Let's say let's implement sample rate as well. Okay, so I'll, let's say, provide a sample rate called 0.5, 50%. That means ideally in Splunk it should ingest as a 60. Okay, we'll see that one as well. Now we will have some kind of dimensions. So for that, there are some certain examples in Splunk website as well. So I'll just copy those dimensions value over here. It's nothing fancy. So it just start with a hash, then the dimension value, then the dimension name, and the dimension value. So if I just copy this guy, this is the dimensions values here. Okay, so I'll just copy it over here. So it is starting from here, so it has to be a hash here. Okay, so if I just go it over here, it's starting with a hash, then the dimension name value, this way. Okay, so we created a metric, counter metric, with a sample rate 50% with certain dimensions like region, data center, something like this, OS. Okay, now I'll save it. I will try to run it over here again. So this time we are ingesting a metric, new metric, okay, with dimensions. So if I just go to our Splunk, right, I'll refresh this page, otherwise that new metric will not show up here. Okay, I'll click on over here. If you see it now, the server request metric is showing up over here, right? So if you see the system temp, it does not close it. If you will be working on over here, you can close it as well. Okay, or you can use it over here. You can do some kind of aggregate as well. So if you see it here, it is indexed as a 60 over here. Somewhere here the 60 will be showing up, right? So that means the sample rate is also Splunk able to parse it. Okay, so we created a new metric. Now if I just click on the split by clause, if you see all the dimensions we just mentioned over there in the matrix is showing up over here. Now you can do your own analysis. This is basically a split by clause, right? So you can create a lot of cool graphs over here, split by something. Now let us try to see that one as well. Okay, so for that what I'll do is we will change something like, let's say I will, for west 1 I will create another I will just ingest another metric over here. Okay, so let it run. Now for another region, let's say east 1. Okay, east 1 I will be ingesting another metric over here. Okay, east 1, let's say it is 26 with the again same sample rate. As sample rate we already understood what it is, so I'm not changing it over there. Okay, so let us ingest this one as well here. Okay, so let us go back to this Splunk and refresh this guy. Okay, so now if you see it for the server request, right? Now if I just split by region here. Okay, now if you see the US East and US 2 is coming up, let's enable the stacking over here. Okay, you'll be able to understand. For US West we ingested 2 matrices over here, right? And for US East we ingested single metric over here, right? So that is what we are showing up. It is showing up over here. Now you can create your own aggregations over there, and accordingly you can create charts over here, right? And then maybe you can, there is a way over here to open this in search as well, just to see the search queries here. Okay, we will try to see this thing, the search stuff in separate video. Okay, there are a lot of options over here as well. You can select as a report, you can select as a alert over here, even you can save as a dashboard panel over here or export. Okay, so those type of stuff you can do it over here as well. So we ingested 2 different kinds of matrices, basic and the extended format of statsd in Splunk. Okay, now what if our metric generating system is sending the statsd the statsd matrices in separate format? In statsd there are a lot of ways you can send the matrices, right? One of the way could be like using the dimensions value in the metric name itself. Okay, now in those cases we need to play with our props.conf files. Okay, configurations. We'll see that one in next video. Okay.